Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I will be talking about Scalar for the GameCube. This is a game that I've had since childhood. We bought it at a flea market when I was young. As a kid, I used to enjoy it, but now upon replaying it, I have to say, it's not very good. It's pretty bad. One of the worst games ever made, actually. Allow me to show you why. The game opens up in the middle of the night at a random house in a neighborhood. They don't explain where this is or anything. They don't explain who owns the house. It's just here. But in the basement of the house, as we will find out, there is a military general who is torturing a child. Why is this child being tortured? I'm not entirely certain. The game doesn't really explain that very well. They just need to get information out of him. What information? I'm not really sure. Somehow it's connected to lizards and the lizard world that we go into, but it's not really well explained. And they're using this device, which can do multiple different things. It can torture people, it can open up portals to alternate dimensions, and it can also turn people into lizards. Why it does this, I don't know. How it does this, I don't know. Why they would build all three of those functionalities into the same device, again, I don't know. This game's not going to answer questions about the story. It's really not good at explaining the story of the game. And then for some reason, being transformed into a lizard for a moment gives him X-ray vision. So now he can see all the people here, and he recognizes all of them. How does he know these characters? That's another thing that they're not really going to explain. Just don't ask questions, okay? The story doesn't really make much sense. They don't explain most of it. They do explain what the villain's plan is, which is to take lizard eggs from the human world into the lizard world to make them into super soldiers. They will explain that multiple times. They will also explain this is a multiverse story multiple times, but they won't explain much else. It's just really not well written. I don't really know what else to say about that. But, yeah. Wait a minute. So, the story of this game is that we are taken to an alternate universe where lizards rule the world. And the bad guy has a device that can turn people into lizards. This is just the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the old one. If you're gonna rip off Super Mario Bros., why would you rip off the old movie that nobody likes, right? Like, just rip off the games, that's what everybody likes. That would be so much better, right? I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why you'd want to copy the plot of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So then after being sucked into the portal, we find ourselves in this mysterious land called Chimerum. And very soon, we will find out that while the story is the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the gameplay is basically just Sonic the Hedgehog, because we're going to spend an awful lot of time grinding on rails, which, as everyone knows, is the Sonic staple. So, you know, quippy blue animal character grinding on rails, beating up bad guys. The villains are all trying to turn small little animals into giant monsters that will take over the world for them. And this is kind of a mixture between the Super Mario Bros. Movie and Sonic the Hedgehog. There isn't much in this game that is unique or original. It's pretty much just ripping off other games, better games, and also the Super Mario Bros. Movie, for some reason. Now, a little while into the level, we will meet another character here named Leon, who looks like he would be voiced by Patrick Warburton if this game had a better budget, but it didn't have much of a budget, so you probably wouldn't recognize most of the voice actors, other than Matthew Mercer, who voices Scalar, but he wasn't exactly famous back in 2004, mostly got famous afterwards. Anyways, as we find out in their interaction here,
Leon? That was my father's name.
Leon was the name of Scalar's father, who went missing many years ago.
Really?
Gee, I'm sure that's not going to come into play later, right? It's not like he's secretly Scalar's father. And this is the most obvious example of foreshadowing I've ever seen. in anything.
It lives in
Nope,
trees for 4
there's
months,
definitely good
protects
writers here.
against lizard
They
habitat.
wouldn't just
You're quite
be
the
incredibly
trouble.
obvious with their foreshadowing.
Freedom
A
fighter
leader
than
plot twist.
you.
No.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I
Don't-
like
don't worry
rebels,
about it.
Especially lizard freedom.
We also
fighters.
find out here that
Hey,
Scalar
tell me something.
has
When do
this
I
weird
wake
thing
up
where
for
he
a
always gets
show?
involved in
Wake up.
protests
This is
protecting
no
lizards
dream.
for some reason.
Okay.
Maybe that's why the military was after him or something, but I don't know. It's not really
Oh, no.
well
Hey,
explained.
go away. I'm just. You're still
But then,
just
a
one
bit
more
later,
speck
we'll
of dust
meet up
trapped
with Leon
in the
again,
most
and he'll
pathetic
explain to
world
us
you
that
can
our goal
I know
in this game
speck of
is to
dust.
collect lizard eggs.
Can do anything.
Really?
There's
I bet
1 or
you
2 in every
can't
level,
rescue that
20 in
lizard.
total. And that's basically what you're doing. You're just trying to collect all these lizard eggs that were taken by the bad guys so they can make super soldiers. Now, one thing you should know about this game is that it really likes having very loud sound effects and also bright flashes of light. It really wants to give you sensory overloads an awful lot. And even though the combat in this game is very simplistic, they have a tendency of forcing you into these little circles where you fight a bunch of enemies. Which isn't really that fun, because like I said, the combat is incredibly simple. It's just a 3-hit combo. And you're mostly just defeating every enemy the exact same way. So I don't really think we need these little combat challenges, but there's going to be an awful lot of them along the way. But then right up here, we will find our first egg. And then after we do that, we will get to leave this world and go on to the next one. But before we do, we have to go back to Leon, and his Repidactyl will fly us out of here. But first, we can buy upgrades from Leon, and we will get those upgrades by having the Repidactyl vomit on us. Because that's definitely the greatest way to get upgrades, is to have a pterodactyl vomit on you, right? That's a fantastic way to earn upgrades and gain better abilities.
Yuck!
Yeah.
This better work.
In the next world, we will find out about one of the game's central mechanics, which is being able to transform into different enemies by defeating a certain number of them. It works by having one specific transformation in every world you go into. Sometimes it will be one you've already unlocked, other times it will be a new one. In this one, we will be able to transform into Bakuldos, who have the ability to throw bombs, which gets used in a few puzzles. It also just makes the combat so much easier, because now you can defeat all the enemies from 20 feet away from them before they even have a chance to see you. Because obviously, if the combat's already super simple and not great, you gotta make a way for it to be even simpler and even more boring. This game is so fun. But then after every 2 worlds, there will be a boss fight. In this case, we are fighting the Iguana King, who is described as a newborn monstrosity. And you know, with a title like that, I think I'm gonna love this character, because I feel like people probably call Kiddy Kong a newborn monstrosity, right? So that means this character's gonna be my new son. Gotta get the adoption papers ready. Oh, wait, actually, on second thought, I don't think I want to adopt this one. Maybe if he looked a little more like this. But as it stands, nah, I think I'll pass. I think I'll just beat you up. Then we'll just get the egg that was here, and then we'll leave. And on the way out of here, Leon will re-establish what we already knew, that the villains want to make super soldiers using eggs.
He's going to clone those soldiers into
Because that's the thing that they have to explain multiple times throughout the game, instead of explaining any of the other things that they don't ever explain. They just have to explain this one multiple times,
You have a plan
because
to
this
get
game
it?
has such great writing.
of something.
Now, in the next world, we will acquire a new transformation, which is called a Croc. K-R-O-C-K, Croc. Which is just a ball that you can make spikes out of. Wait a minute. That sounds familiar too. This game is also ripping off Majora's Mask. This is just a Goron, but not as cool as a Goron. And this transformation also brings such thrilling gameplay with it, because you can just sit nearby enemies and they'll just walk into you and die. yet another way that this game just has absolutely terrible combat. But don't worry, it shakes things up because now, instead of grinding on one rail, you'll grind on two. It's totally different, trust me. It's a completely different system now. And then after getting an egg in Colonium, we will move on to the next area called Altus, where we will get the ability to camouflage, which is just an ability that regular Scalar has, not any of the transformations, which just lets you sneak past little swamps filled with enemies that will just kill you if you step on them while not in camouflage. Because I guess they wanted to have at least some puzzles, even though they're not really puzzles, they're just really simple. Just make sure you don't touch any of the tentacles as you cross the spots and you'll be fine. Nothing will really happen. We also bring back the bomb throwing transformation here. Not really much to say about this level. Sometimes you're throwing bombs at stuff and other times you're just sneaking across swamps. A thing that will come back in many levels in the future. Because it's such throwing gameplay to just have to sneak across things with a limited amount of time. And then next boss fight will have us face off against the Dragon Guards, who are 3 of the 5 villains we were introduced at the beginning of the game. We will fight all 3 of them here, and they will never reappear ever again in the game. They're all just completely defeated after this boss fight. 3 of the 5 main villains are dead after boss fight 2. I don't really know what they were thinking when they made that decision. It doesn't make that much sense. But okay, I guess we're just going to defeat them. Also, again, Scalar recognized them at the beginning of the game. We don't really know how he knows any of them. It wasn't explained. He just knew their names for some reason. So we're defeating 3 of the main villains pretty early, without really knowing anything about them. Because I guess they just forgot that you should probably have compelling villains in your games. Or something like that. I don't know. But, yep, here we go. But, yep, now they're all gone. So, I guess we just move on from that. And the next world's a little unique, at least, where we're going to start off with a turret section where we just gotta shoot a bunch of stuff before we land. There'll be a few of these throughout the game. They're not really very fun. They're just annoying. I guess, to an extent, I can applaud them for trying something a bit different, but, I mean, I can't really say I really enjoyed any of these at all. But then once we do land, we will find out we're at a racetrack, and we are going to be rolling around at a racetrack, just like in Majora's Mask. Goron Racing, that's what this world is. Yet another thing that is definitely completely original. Actually, you know, it is pretty fun though. I guess I can give it that. Actually, I don't really think I can keep doing this. I gotta be honest. Cut the gameplay. See, the actual topic I want to talk about in this video isn't that Scalar is bad, because it's not bad. It's fine. It's not the greatest game in the world. It's certainly no Donkey Kong Country 3, but it's fine. What the video is really about is I want to talk about how easy it is for a YouTube video to inaccurately represent a game to people that have never actually played it. If you haven't played a game and then you watch a YouTube video about how that game is bad, then you're missing some important context about just the game in general. Like, they're going to leave out parts of the game, and you can't really just take it at face value. For example, in Scalar, I would say that the story is probably a weak point. Stories are pretty much weak points in most 3D platformers, though, but at the same time, I kind of left out some important details. The game does explain how Scalar knows all of the villains that you fight, for example. Basically, they are the people that he was protesting at those protests with regards to the lizards that he was involved in. There was the director of the movie that he protested, for example. And then, while you do fight 3 of those villains and defeat them permanently in the second boss fight of the game, there's only 5 boss fights in the game. There's 20 eggs, and every 4th egg you get is from a boss fight. So, like, it's not that weird that it's the second boss fight, especially because the fourth and fifth boss fights have important plot details. So, they're there for a reason. Maybe they could have made it be the third boss fight where you fight all those three, but, you know, it's not that weird. I honestly don't really like the combat very much, but I don't like the combat very much in most platformers. So, like, that's just a personal thing. If you like combat in platformers, I mean, it's pretty much the same as most other platformers. So, you know, if you like 3D platformers, Scalar's a fun time. It's not like a genre-defining game like Mario or Sonic, but it's fine. Now, to get to the true topic of the video, there's a few different reasons as to why a YouTube video wouldn't really be the most accurate source for the quality of a game. And first and foremost, it's because they're not really trying to be accurate reviews most of the time. They're just pieces of entertainment. They're trying to entertain you rather than tell you the honest quality of a game. It's easier to make an entertaining video if you push the quality of the game to one of two extremes. Either you say it's really good or it's really bad. If it's somewhere in the middle, it's kind of more difficult to make an entertaining video out of that. So oftentimes, they will probably push it one way or the other. And secondly, we also have to take into account that, like, everybody has personal bias. We all like things and dislike things for different reasons. So, expecting every single YouTube video to be entirely objective is kind of weird, and maybe you should take that into account when you watch a video. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to have personal bias, because we all have it. We can't just turn it off. It's bad when you don't take into account that other people have personal biases. Personally, I don't really think objective quality is a thing that exists, because we all care about different things, we all like different things. So the idea that a game is objectively good or objectively bad is flawed, just at the very base of it, because something one person cares about is going to be something that another person just doesn't care about even a little bit. So you should probably take into account that when a YouTube video is talking about a game, they're not really talking about it from an objective standpoint. Even if a person acts like they're trying to be objective, at the end of the day, they're talking about their own personal subjective experience with the game, rather than some objective quality, right? Now, before I give examples, I just want to make it abundantly clear that I have no issue with the people that make the videos. I'm not raising issues with YouTubers, but rather the culture around YouTubers, because, you know, it's fine to make videos about how you dislike a game, but it's just an issue when people that have never played the game look at that video and now say, this game is bad because this one person said so. That's really all I'm trying to say, is the culture around YouTubers is weird, and there are issues with it. My first example is Chibi Robo Ziplash. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you can all guess who made a video about this game that has come to completely define the entire discussion around the game. And see, the thing about this game is that it's not made for Chibi Robo fans, which you might think is a bit weird, but ultimately you have to think that Chibi Robo is not a Nintendo property. It's a Skip Limited property. Nintendo publishes games and helps develop them, but at the end of the day, Skip Limited is the company that completely depended on Chibi Robo making money, because that was their one IP. Well, they had art-style games as well, but ultimately they needed Chibi Robo to work. And the first game, it didn't sell very well. So after the first game, Nintendo wasn't really providing them with lots and lots of money, because they hadn't proved that they could sell a lot of copies with Chibi Robo. The first game only sold 400,000 copies. And the other games didn't really sell very well, but that's ultimately because Nintendo wasn't really supplying them with a lot of money. But that makes sense, because Nintendo's only going to supply them with a lot of money if they're going to get money in return, which they weren't. So ultimately, Skip wanted to try to make Chibi Robo into a more mainstream game. So instead of trying the same thing over and over again by having Chibi Robo be this unique game, they said, hey, why don't we just try making a 2D platformer? So they did. It didn't really work out. It only sold 300,000 copies, which is less than the first game, but not really a lot less, all things considered. Although at the same time, sales on a GameCube should probably be lower than sales on a 3DS, which isn't the case here. And then, you know, after the failure of Chibi Robo Ziplash, Skip kind of just disappeared. because they weren't making enough money. All the people there went on to different companies. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think we just need to address that it makes a lot of sense for someone that likes the first game to not like this game, because it's not trying to appeal to them. So, if you're a fan of the first game and you go into this thinking you wish it was like the GameCube game, then, you know, you're not going to like it, because you're already biased against it. And because you're biased against it, anything even remotely negative about the game, you're going to really, really hate, and you're not really going to see any positives, because you have already decided this game is not a game that you enjoy before you even play it. I don't think this is like a really amazing game, but I don't think it's horrible either. It's just perfectly fine. That's really all I have to say about it. Maybe I'll make a video about this at some point in the future, but my general overview is that I think it's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. There are some choices in this game that I'm not a fan of, but then there are other things that I don't really think are that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Now, another game that I feel has a very similar issue where people went into it having already decided that they didn't like it would be Balan Wonderworld. Now, Balan Wonderworld is a game that, like, not everyone's going to like it. It's an acquired taste, to be sure. But at the same time, I feel a lot of people went into it having already decided that the central mechanics of the game were bad and unforgivable, and there's no way that it could be a good game. They went into it having already decided they didn't like the costume system, so obviously when they ended up playing it, they didn't like the costume system because they had already pre-decided it was bad. If you go into this game with an open mind and you're willing to work with it within the confines of what it is, I feel like you can have a fun time. The issue is just that people didn't really want to work within the confines of what it is. They decided that there's absolutely no way that a 3D platformer could function while not always having the ability to jump in it. Obviously, it's entirely impossible to make a game without the ability to jump, where the central mechanics of the game are platforming. What are you doing here, Captain Toad? You're a good game. You get a pass. Balan Wonderworld doesn't, though, even though it has a jump for 90% of the game. This is fine, but this is not fine, obviously. And then, because people went into it with this bias towards not liking it, when people ended up making YouTube videos about it, they were being overly critical of it because they had already decided it was bad. So, you know, even though the game is very obviously telling the story through metaphors, if you take it super seriously, you can then pretend like the story is really, really terrible, even though it's very abundantly clear it's all metaphorical. It's not as super serious as people want to make it out to be. And then, again, because you have already decided that the central mechanics of the game are bad, when you can't figure out how to do one thing, obviously it's because the game is poorly designed, not because you're doing something incorrect, right? Again, I don't want to name names or anything, but there are certainly YouTube videos out there that don't really portray the game completely accurately. Probably because of personal bias, could also just be because they're trying to make an entertaining video at the expense of the game, which people do. At the end of the day, I think Balan Wonderworld is a game where it can be fun if you allow it to be fun, but not everybody allowed it to be fun, so it developed a reputation of being bad. That's my general takeaway. I might make a video about this at some point as well, so I'll go more in depth at that point in time. But yeah. At the end of the day, I think we should just not really take other people's opinions on games as gospel, and we should try games for ourselves and give them honest attempts. Go into games not having already decided that you're not going to like it, because you might enjoy it, but if you decide it's bad before you even play it, then you're probably not going to enjoy it, because it's going to the game's going to have a really difficult time to convince you that it's good if you have already decided that it's not good, right? And at the end of the day, we also need to just remember that YouTube videos are there for entertainment. They're not always trying to be a completely honest and fair review of the game. Honestly, I don't really think that a YouTube video that ends with a game coming to life and trying to kill the YouTuber is trying to really portray the game in a completely honest light, right? Anyways, maybe you should play Scalar if you ever have a chance to, because, oh